There's an exercise on my website called the all fours left COA exercise. I think I just called it that just to make people understand what it's for. I think the real name is all four breathing with right arm reach, something along those lines. And I have it there because it's a very important exercise for people who are really struggling to expand their rib cage with breathing. And if you have watched any of the videos or you are familiar with PRI, something dropped, I don't know what it was, and you're familiar with PRI, you know that a lot of people are living with an extended spine. So here's the front, here's the spine, and it's a little arch through the lower back, and we have an extended spine all the way up. So in order to change that, we needed to round the spine, which is flexion, and breathe in that position so that these tight rib cage, particularly in the back on the left, see, they're all together when I arch the spine, when I extend it, and then when I flex it, those ribs come apart. So we got to get into an all fours position to breathe with this back rounded, and it will help open up that posterior rib cage with air. That is a huge concept. Posterior mediastinum expansion, or just posterior ribcage expansion, particularly on the left, is a really huge concept. Without it, you can't get your pelvis to stay in left AFIR. You can't get that neutral pelvis to stick, or maybe you won't be able to get it at all. Now, a lot of people do it wrong, and it looks a lot easier than it actually is. So I'm just going to go over the top, I guess 5, I just jotted these down, top 5 mistakes that people make when doing this exercise. Then again, it's harder than it looks to do it correctly. And if someone's doing it and it's too easy, they're probably not doing it correctly. Now, the first thing I would say is that some people in the video and in the pictures on my website, there is a towel underneath my left knee. If the towel is not there, you will not have the proper pelvis position. So we know that we need to bring the pelvis back. That's a huge truck, just went by, garbage truck. We need to bring the pelvis back on the left side. We know if you're in a left AIC pattern or a PEC pattern, the pelvis is forward on the left, or maybe it's forward on both sides, but it's at least forward on the left. Putting the towel, so when you get onto your hands and knees, you're like this. You're not like this. You're like this if you're in that pattern. Putting the towel under, and so this pelvis is oriented to the right. We need your pelvis to orient to the left. That's what's called left AFIR. We have to get to the left. If the towel underneath the knee puts your pelvis to the left, and then because the pelvis is to the left, the rest of your body is actually to the right. And that's what, as humans, we have difficulty doing. We have trouble shifting to our left side and then rotating your torso to the right and breathing. That's what PRI is really trying to get you to do. So if you do this exercise correctly, if you do everything that is shown, that towel underneath the left knee actually orients your pelvis to the left, which actually rotates your torso to the right. That brings up, so that's putting you in the correct position. If you don't put that towel underneath your left knee, you're essentially either going to be doing it with a neutral pelvis, and it may not be neutral because that bigger right diaphragm is, every breath you take, the bigger right diaphragm is probably going to try to draw you to the right. Or you're doing it on a pelvis that's already going to be oriented to the right, and you're really not doing anything at that point. So that towel underneath the knee has to be there, otherwise your pelvis will not be oriented to the left, and that's what you need. Number 2, not rounding your back enough and not staying side bent to the left. So when you round your back, the spine has to move up towards the ceiling. Also, you need to be side bent to the left. So this is the left side. You need to be side bent to the left at that same time. So when you do that, you are bringing the rib cage and the pelvis closer together on that left side through those combined movements to get that left ZOA, because what we lack, a lot of people will put their weight on their left leg, but their upper body is still to the right. So this is kind of how they're hanging out. How do you know? Because you constantly see shoulders higher on the left than on the right. Not every single time, but 85% of the time. That's a completely random number. However, the point being, most people you'll see will have a higher left shoulder. And if you're on your left leg and the left shoulder is still higher, you're not really on your left leg. This is on your left leg because now your entire body is over your left side. So you need to have your back round so that it's out of extension, and side bent to the left, so round and side bent to the left to close down this left side to engage the left abs. Number 3, not being left enough. So sometimes people will be on their hands and knees. Now the person's head would be here, right? And they have, let's say this is their leg, this is their femur. They're kind of like, can you see that? They're kind of like, more like this. So this left leg is out a little bit, it's abducted in a way. It's a little bit too far out. You gotta get that left hip, you gotta get the pelvis, your whole left side over that left leg, which will put it into a little bit of internal rotation. And if you're good at it, you could feel your left inner thigh at that point. But some people, when they set themselves up, the left leg is kind of further out in an abducted position, and that's kind of contrary to what you really want. So you got to get your pelvis over the left side. Some people, when they try to close down the left side, they push their pelvis to the right. You got to bring your shoulder, so they'll do this. So they'll go, they'll bring the left side down, the left shoulder down, but then they push the pelvis to the right. You got to bring the shoulder down and the rib cage down and the left hip up. So it's this. And the towel underneath the knee makes sure that the pelvis stays oriented to the left. Okay, so you got to be over that left side completely, otherwise you won't get the full benefit of the exercise. Number 4, letting the torso fall on exhalation. So as you inhale, your back is like this. As you exhale, your back has to stay like this. Remember, you're opening up the rib cage in this position, so when you inhale, pop, the rib cage opens up and it expands. You need to maintain that position as you exhale. A lot of people will do this as they inhale, and then as they exhale, they go back down. And that's not what we're looking for. We need this position, we want to remain there, and if you can remain there, then you'll start to use your left serratus and left lower trap muscles, trap muscles in general, left lower trap to help stabilize that relationship, that all-important relationship of the left scapula on top of that left rib cage. The other one would be, sometimes when people breathe, they're in this position. As they breathe, their weight shifts backwards. That could be their lower back or their brain trying to arch their back because that's the only way they know how to breathe. So once you're positioned properly, your weight has to be a little bit forward, kind of your eyes have to be lined up kind of over your index finger. Some people are just too far back and they don't get the full benefit of the exercise. They got to be a little bit forward, and then when you inhale, you got to make sure that your weight doesn't go back. Sometimes I'll put my hand on someone's back and they'll inhale and I'll feel it pushing into my hand, and I keep them there so that they realize that their strategy as they inhale is they're trying to move backwards to help them inhale because it's an easier position. They're trying to extend because it's kind of what they know how to do. So you got to stay forward and not inhale and move back. You got to stay forward over that hand, over your hands, over your index fingers. And that's really it. That exercise is left stance with right trunk rotation. That exercise has it built in. You can also pick up the right arm, which creates even more torso rotation, and as you're reaching with the exhalation, which you don't have to do necessarily, especially in the beginning, it's really, really hard, you'll also be getting more left abdominal activity because you're further closing down that left side on exhalation, and then if you keep it closed upon inhalation, the air has to either go to the posterior rib cage or it has to go to the right chest wall, which is another area that often gets tight. The other thing would be when your arm is up, you're also working the scapula, the right scapular muscles. And that is that. So I hope you found that exercise or that little synopsis of the top 5 reasons why the all fours right arm reach doesn't seem to work for some people, and those are the biggest mistakes.